Testing, testing. We are live. I'm a little bit delayed, so if you chat me and I don't get back to you right away, I will. I'm doing this by myself tonight, so I will. Hold on, let me just make sure I'm live. Can everybody see me? Are we good? Can you see me? Okay. Welcome. Thank you for joining me here on this Friday evening. I hope you've all had a great week, and I hope you're even going to have a better weekend. Thanks for starting your weekend off by joining me here on Horror Talk Live Episode 3, where we're going to discuss James Cameron's 1986 film, Aliens. This has been highly requested by a few folks, and especially by a gentleman, Kurt, who's going to be marrying my sister this October. Kurt, this goes out to you. He's been asking me for a very long time to discuss Aliens, and tonight we're going to finally do it. I just rewatched it the other night on that from that Blu-ray box set. Hopefully we'll get a 4K sometime soon. I know me and Brandon were discussing that earlier. You're probably wondering where Dale_A is. Well, I'm going to tell you right now. I got a text message from the Bat and Spider Dungeon Master, if you can believe they have such a thing. And Dale has been sequestered to the Bat and Spider dungeon deep within the bowels of the Bat and Spider World Headquarters. I don't know what he did to deserve such punishment. He's being flogged right now, I do believe, but we might see him pop up in the chat. They do pump Wi-Fi down there, and I do believe they gave him a tablet or an iPhone. So he may join us at some point in the chat, and he will be back for Bat and Spider's episode next week. But speaking of Dale_A, tonight I'm talking about Aliens by myself, but on May 12th, you can mark it on your calendars, we're going to discuss another sequel to a film, the original film I absolutely adore, and we're going to talk about a sequel that doesn't get talked about a lot. And yeah, he probably is to expose something Cablasto is doing. Cablasto might be there with him, who knows. We're going to discuss another sequel on May 12th, and that sequel is this baby right here, Fright Night 2. It's hard to find the sequel. It's not streaming anywhere. You can watch it on YouTube. The full-length movie is on YouTube. You can watch it for free. We're supposed to get a physical media release of this film sometime this year. I've not heard any more news since they announced it in the beginning of the year. I have a Blu-ray of this movie, and I'm going to rewatch it. Dale has never seen it, so it's going to be a first-time watch for him, and we're going to discuss it. And yeah, I really love that sequel. It's a really fantastic sequel to a great original film, and we're going to discuss that on May 12th. So come back and join us here when Dale will come back and join us once again and hang out. Tonight we're going to talk about James Cameron's Aliens, but a little bit of housekeeping things. Last Friday I got to see Evil Dead Rise with Dale. We went Friday night to the theater. It's right down the street from our house. Absolutely loved it. You can check out my review right down to scroll on down. I did an out of theater reaction and a full length reaction. I really liked it a lot. It was fantastic. I gave it a 9 out of 10. Yeah, it was a great watch, and I really enjoyed it. And it's a great film in the Evil Dead franchise, and I hope they continue with it. It's been successful. It's made over $30 million at the American box office so far, so I think we'll get another one. Now, on Saturday night, I know Dale discussed this on their episode on Thursday, but we got to go see Joe Bob at the Clayton Center in North Carolina, and we got to meet Joe Bob after the show, and I got this poster, and him and Darcy signed it. Darcy was there, although she wasn't a part of the show, but she hung out before and after signing autographs and taking photos. And if you ever get a chance to see Joe Bob's How Redneck Saved Hollywood show, it's fantastic. His voice was a little off. He even said that before he started. And you could tell he was struggling, but the man, he powered through, and it went for about 2 hours and 40 minutes. He showed clips from different movies, like Smokey and the Bandit, Gator, a bunch of other films, and it was a really well-done presentation. I enjoyed the hell out of it, and I would definitely go see it again if he came back around. So if you get a chance, check out Joe Bob. If he comes close to you, it's really a fantastic show, and he was joking around, and it was a very good, insightful show about how rednecks played a big part in Hollywood and still do to this day. So yeah, that was great too. Now let's just dive into this movie, okay? I'm not going to fluff this too much. Let's get into James Cameron's Aliens in 1986. Now, I didn't see this until the early 90s. I've seen it many times over the years, so on this rewatch, I just watched the theatrical cut. I didn't watch the extended edition, which adds 17 minutes of footage. And there's some cool footage in there, but I stuck with the theatrical cut for this rewatch. LV246 or 426. Right at the beginning of the film, we see Ripley drifting through space. It's 57 years later. She's found by a salvage team. I'm just going to go through the quick plot here, and we'll dive into this bad boy. She gets rescued. She finds out that it's 57 years later from the events on the Nostromo in the original Ridley Scott classic film. And she has meetings with the corporation about what happened on the ship and that there's a colony on LV-426, and they've never complained about anything strange there. And all of a sudden, Ripley gets approached by Burke, who is played by, why am I blanking on his name? Paul Reiser. I should know that name off the top of my head. And he wants her to go with these Colonial Marines out to LV-426 to see what is going on. And she finally agrees to go, and they take off. And we're introduced to all of our Marines, our Colonial Marines. And we got Michael Biehn as Corporal Hicks. We got the great Bill Paxton, sadly, who's not with us anymore, as Hudson. We got Mark Rolston as Drake. I got a bunch of notes here. I wrote like 3 or 4 pages of notes. We got William Hope as Lieutenant Gorman. We got Al Matthews as Sergeant Alpone, and we got Jeanette Goldstein as Vasquez. She would also be in James Cameron's Terminator 2, and she was also in Near Dark. Matter of fact, 3 of the cast members from this film went on to be in Near Dark for Catherine Bigelow, if you've ever seen Near Dark. I know, Yoli, you just saw this on the big screen, if I remember correctly. Yeah, we also got the great Lance Henriksen in here as Bishop, the all-official person on this crew, and obviously Sigourney Weaver playing Ripley. Now, Michael Biehn was a light replacement for James Remar, was originally cast as Hicks in this film. Michael Biehn got called on Friday, and he was in London on Monday starting to film this role. And so he wasn't available to get used to everybody else like James Cameron wanted this group of Marines to get used to each other. But him and Bill Paxton formed a relationship off of that movie. They got along really, really well. But anyway, they go off to LV-426, and they start looking around for the colonists, trying to figure out where they are and what is going on. Remar got dropped because he got arrested on a drug charge. I do believe he admitted in an interview about a couple years ago. He said he got dropped from the film because he had some trouble with the law for getting arrested for drug possession or something. So Cameron just worked with Michael Biehn on the Terminator, and he brought him in on this. And eventually, we find Newt, this little girl who has managed to survive, even though all of her parents and her brother are gone, and all these people, they can't find them. Finally, they locate them under the heat exchangers. They go down, and they walk unbeknownst to them into the alien nest. And that's when shit really hits the fan, where we get a fantastic, intense action scene where the aliens start taking them out one by one. And Hudson, Hicks, Jeanette Goldstein's character, and Drake get out, but Drake ends up getting killed before he gets back in the car, and they escape. And then pretty much our folks that survived have to find a way to fight off this alien threat and get off the planet before they're wiped out. And that is pretty much Aliens. This film takes a different direction than Ridley Scott's original. Ridley Scott's original was basically a haunted house in outer space. That's how Ridley Scott's described it. It's how many people have described it over the years. And that's very much true about that original film. And it's a great original film. It's creepy. It's scary. At least when I was younger, it was scary. James Cameron knew we couldn't tread the same territory. So what he decided to do was up the action quotient here and just go balls out with it. And just like the tagline on the poster, this time it's war. And that's pretty much what James Cameron made. He made a war movie in space against these alien creatures. And in the hands of a lesser filmmaker, this film might not have worked as well. But James Cameron, coming off the Terminator, and as we know what his career went on to be, he knocks this out of the park. Between the production design, now they shot this at Pinewood Studios in England, and we'll talk about that a little later. Cameron did not have a good time working with the English crew. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But Sigourney Weaver didn't want to come back at first, and they convinced her to come back. Matter of fact, Fox didn't even want to make this movie at first, if you could believe that. They weren't interested in making another Alien film. They thought the first one was kind of a fluke in its success because horror was on the rise at that point. So they didn't think a sequel would work. That's why it took so long to make a sequel to this film. But you can't deny the results here. And this film became a major hit. It was an $18.5 million budget. It made 85 in America and 131, 183 worldwide. The reason why the worldwide numbers are iffy is because back then the worldwide totals were never accurate. So Fox says it was 157. Some places online say 131. Some places say it went up to 180. So who knows? But it made a lot of money, and that's why Jim Cameron got to go on and do The Abyss after this, and True Lies and T2 and all the things he got to do after this, and became Jim Cameron, because a lot of people didn't know if this was going to work. So it was honestly, the crew in England didn't believe in Jim Cameron. That's why he had such a hard time with him. But what I like what Jim Cameron did, besides upping the action, I love the relationship between Sigourney Weaver, or Ripley, and Newt. We find out that Ripley had a daughter, at least in the director's cut. In the theatrical cut, they don't go in it as much. But it's nice to see Ripley with a young girl. Like she becomes a mother figure to this girl, this frightened girl that they find. And the interaction between them two is really sweet. And you can see how much Ripley really cares about her. And I love that. And I love the interaction between the Marines. I know, Kurt, you were texting me quotes from Hudson and Hicks all week long because he's been excited about tonight. Can you guys still see me? Am I broadcasting? I think I'm still going through. Okay. Sorry about that. It's been a little funny tonight with the YouTube stream. A lot of people are streaming, and I think it bogs it down. I love Michael Biehn here coming back and working with Cameron in this situation for this movie. I think he makes a great Hicks. Now, James Remar would have been different, but I love James Remar too, so it's a shame that he wasn't able to do the film. Now, for the alien creatures, James Cameron reunited with the great Stan Winston. And his work here is impeccable as always. The alien creatures look just as great as they did in the original film. And the alien queen that we see at the end, which is fantastic, that James Cameron took that step and showed us what was laying the eggs. And I love that scene where Ripley goes in to get Newt, and when she gets her and she's trying to get out, and she goes where the main lair is, where the queen is in this like just room filled with eggs. I love that scene. And the queen communicating with her drones about backing off Ripley when she threatens the eggs. I love that scene. There's so much in that scene, and it's just so well done. The effects overall are fantastic. For 86, this really holds up as a film. I love the interaction with the Colonial Marines. We get to know enough about them before the shit really hits the fan when they go under the heat exchangers. To care about them, get a little bit about their personality. Hudson comes off as, I love Bill Paxton. These roles are great. Yeah, Brandon, you're absolutely right. Every movie you get to see the evolution more and more. Even in 3, I know a lot of people don't like 3. You get to see a different evolution of that creature, and it's an interesting film. It's not my favorite, obviously, but it's an interesting film in its own right. Yeah, the interaction between the Marines, you really get a sense of their relationship together, and Hicks is obviously the leader of them, especially once Alpone gets killed by the aliens. Yeah, I like Alien 3 too, Kurt. I know it's not my favorite, but I do like that film. I think Fincher did the best job he could with that film, considering the hard time he got from the studio and the producers. I mean, Fincher's pretty much disowned that film now. He said before that he always sees all the problems with that film, but I still dig it. I have the assembly cut of that film, but I've never watched it. I have to watch that sometime. Everybody says it's actually better, but I don't know. I've never watched it myself. Now, good evening, Rich. I believe you're coming at us from the East End right now, drinking a few beers. Once they get to LV-426, I mean, obviously, Lieutenant Gorman is the leader, but not really. And he's kind of like the pencil neck. He got promoted probably because he kissed ass or whatever. He's not really respected by the other Marines. Hicks is more respected than he is. But even he becomes useful later on when him and Vasquez are in the air ducts, and he helps her out, and then he decides to stay with her as they detonate each other to fight off the aliens to give the others a chance to survive. I love that scene. I love that kind of brotherhood moment between them, considering she had nothing but disdain for him up until that point, where he actually showed a backbone and stayed with her as they detonated themselves to fight off the horde of aliens. I liked in the director's cut, I wanted to bring this up even though I didn't watch the director's cut, where they show they had the sentries outside the barricades when they hold up in that lab area. And I love that scene. Cameron with the director's cuts, there's some good stuff in it. There's some stuff that you could see why it was cut out for runtime purposes. So I decided just to watch the theatrical cut. But there's still, I mean, I've watched the director's cut quite a few times over the years. But the theatrical cut, I think, is a really damn good cut. I mean, there's a few interesting things in the director's cut, but just like with the T2 director's cut, I always felt like the theatrical cut's the leaner cut. It flows better. And I think it's the same with Aliens. I think the theatrical cut flows better here, but there's some interesting things in the director's cut. What else? Well, I like when when Newt's in danger and they're trying to get away, and I love when Burt gets his comeuppance because he's such a slime ball when he sets the scene between Ripley and Newt. I'm jumping all over the place here, but the scene between Ripley and Newt in the lab when Burke sets them up and releases the face hugger while they're sleeping, that's one of the scenes where Cameron really ratchets up the tension, and it's a really nice, intense scene, and it's well directed, and I love how Burke seems like a nice guy at first, and we do believe he's a nice guy because Paul Reiser comes off as a very likable dude at the beginning of the film, but then to see him turn into that like corporate sleazebag, like he's just looking out for himself, and then Ripley says that famous line, "You don't see them fucking each other over for a percentage point." I love that quote, and yeah, he just comes off as a complete scumbag. Yeah, Brandon, definitely. Gorman is the antithesis of an incompetent lieutenant trope. He's totally incompetent. Ripley has to take over to save whoever's left from the Marines from coming back from when they're getting slaughtered. And Gorman's totally ineffective. And when he gets knocked out, you don't even really miss him while he's off screen for a little bit. But then when he wakes up and they're in that situation where the aliens come through into the lab and when Hicks discovers the aliens coming up above the drop ceiling, then he actually grows a spine and becomes a part of the team. And then you can see Vasquez actually has some respect for him at the end. I like that turn on him. I mean, we don't get a lot from him other than he's pretty much useless until that point. But I like that little turn where they gave his character a redemption arc at the end when him and Vasquez the aliens are closing in on them. I always like that where he does get his chance at redemption in that one moment. And I actually end up being a likable character at that point, even though he's totally useless at the beginning when everybody's getting slaughtered and Ripley has to take over. That's why she's one of the most badass female protagonists that ever in film. That's why that character has been looked up to, and Ripley is the textbook, strong female character from the 80s for sure. I mean, obviously Linda Hamilton in term T2 eventually brought it back, but Ripley was one of the best and the one that we remember very fondly. And Sigourney Weaver is great here. Obviously, she was nominated for an Academy Award for her performance in this film, and that never happens for a horror sci-fi film. So that was a miracle in itself. But I think that speaks to how well it's written and how well it's directed and constructed. And that goes to the director. I mean, the studio to have Ridley Scott for the first one, although it was early in Ridley Scott's career, and then Cameron for the second one, although it's early in Cameron's career, was really a miracle. And then you have Walter Hill and David Giler as producers on the film. That's, they got lucky. Fox got lucky, and they had faith in Cameron. They let him. I mean, Cameron always has full control, and he's a perfectionist. So, it pays off on screen when you watch this film or any of Cameron's films. Even if you don't like the film, you have to admit that they're very well made. Yeah, and then, like I said, that scene with Newt and Ripley in the lab when Burke really screws them. But then that siege when Hicks finds the aliens coming over to drop something, I love that, the anticipation, and when he reaches it up, and it actually is a frightening moment. All you see is all these aliens coming towards them and then start dropping through the ceiling, and then we get a gun battle, and them escaping through the air duct. And that's when Nuke gets taken not too long after this. And everybody else gets killed. Vasquez, Gorman, and Hudson get killed. And it's just Hicks, Ripley. We also got Bishop, who is trying to fly the emergency ship down to pick them up. And then when Nuke gets taken and Hicks gets hurt, I love how Ripley just turns. She don't even care. She doesn't second guess it. She arms up and she goes in there, and she's going to get Nuke back and kill as many aliens as she has to. And it's great. That actually, I read something today, speaking of that, when they have 15 minutes till the planet's going to detonate because it's overheating, it actually is 15 minutes from the time it's announces 15 minutes until it blows up. Now, you would have no reason to time that, but if it's true from what I read, that is pretty outstanding that Cameron made sure it was true to time from the time it says 15 minutes till the time the planet detonates. And that scene is fantastic when Ripley goes in, like we said before, when she finds the queen, when we finally get to see what's laying these eggs and what's giving birth to these creatures. And the queen is everything you could ever want from a monster design. I mean, Stan Winston really, I read it took 14 to 16 puppeteers to operate that thing. And it looks amazing. And it's all with his design, the lighting, the way it's shot. And it just comes off as a spectacular effect. I mean, Stan Winston was a master at that, him and his guys. And the Alien Queen is the chef's kiss of monster creation. And it looks amazing. But actually, when the alien starts chasing Ripley and they get on the elevator to go up to the platform to get taken by, in the ship to get out of there before the planet blows, the alien was too big to fit on that elevator. They can only put part of it on and shoot it at certain angles and make it look like the whole thing's on there because it was so large it wouldn't fit on there. So they had to take it apart and just use certain pieces to make it look like it was on there. And then, when it gets to the platform, they could reassemble it. But yeah, it was such a large creature that it wouldn't fit on there for them to be able to shoot it like that. And then we get the planet explosion. We think it's over. We think we killed all the aliens. Everybody, our core people are still alive. We're going to have a happy ending. And then we get back to the ship. And hell no, the alien queen makes an appearance, rips Bishop apart, which I absolutely love that scene. And then Ripley comes out with the loader, which looks badass, and has that knockdown, drag out fight, blows out the airlock, and then we have Bishop, Newt, and Ripley left, and they go to hypersleep, and that's the end of Aliens. Honestly, there's always a debate, and you can tell me in the chat, which movie do you prefer, Aliens or Alien? It's very close because they're two great, great films. And I know people have been debating this for years, and whenever you go into a chat and somebody poses that question, it's half people say Aliens, half people say Alien. Yeah, I know, Kurt, you absolutely I love this movie. It's an awesome freaking movie. Yeah, Brand, I agree. It's such a small fraction between the two films. They're both extremely well made. And honestly, in my opinion, I love both of them. But I'm with Brandon. I'm mixed down the middle. There's times when I watch each movie and I love Aliens more by just a little bit. And there's times where Aliens is my favorite by a little bit. So it's hard for me to answer that question. Right now, I'm going to say Aliens, but I am going to rewatch Alien on my 4K, which I have never watched yet on 4K, which I can't wait to watch it. I heard the transfer is spectacular. For some reason, I just haven't watched a 4K. Yeah, the effects are awesome in Aliens. Well, the first one was one alien, and they kept it mostly in the dark. And it was a low budget. It was a more lower budgeted affair, that first film. This one had a more money, obviously 18.5. I think the original Alien had under 10, maybe 9. I can't remember the budget on that film. And Ridley Scott did a great job with that. It was early on in his career. The movie looks amazing. The acting's great. It's a great story. It's creepy as hell. But at the end of the day, this is one of those franchises where the first two films, I can go either way on any given day. I like to tone the first one more. But Harry Dean, yeah, I know. Harry Dean is a standout, and so is Yaphet. they're great together. Their chemistry is amazing in that first film. I think the chemistry between Michael Biehn, Sigourney Weaver, and even Bill Paxton, those three together are fantastic. And I love Bill Paxton across the board. I mean, whenever he shows up in a film, I have a smile on my face. He's always fun to watch. And he gives some great lines in Aliens, which he improvised, by the way. And Cameron let him improvise. I mean, game over, man. That was an improvisation. And some of the other lines he throws out there are improvisations as well, because Bill Paxton was great at that. He could just come up with stuff on the fly. And I have notes here. I just want to go. There's a couple bullet points I do want to get to while we're talking about some of this stuff. The alien set, the alien nest where they go into. Yeah, why don't you just put her in charge? When they go into the alien nest, that set, they left as is. They reused that set for a little film called Tim Burton's Batman in '89. And when they went in there to dress that set as Axis Chemicals from that film, the alien stuff was still in there. And they had to remove it to build the set the way they needed it for Tim Burton's movie. I thought that was pretty cool that they left it just like that. I'm thinking to myself, can you imagine if you just walked in there, didn't know, and there was like alien stuff on the wall? It would freak you the hell out. Oh, but yeah, Aliens, a lot of studios, and this is nothing out of the ordinary, a lot of studios test their movies. Aliens did not get tested. They were cutting and scoring the film up to a week before it got released. That's why it was never tested for audiences. Cameron never got a chance to test it because they were working right up to a week before it got released. The only people that got to see it before it got released in theaters was the studio execs, and they loved it. But no, they didn't get to do any testing. The movie just went out, and it was a huge hit. So lucky enough. Oh, Simple Plan. That's a great movie. You're right. Aliens has not got the 4K treatment yet. Alien has. Me and Brandon were talking about this earlier today on Discord. Disney supposedly, a bunch of Cameron, I know this, I read an article about a month ago where a bunch of Cameron movies are going to get the 4K treatment, or at least a physical finally a physical release. Like Abyss is supposed to get a 4K release, I think soon, but I haven't heard anything since. They're looking at Aliens because Disney owns all these properties now. So, and Disney has been slacking on their physical media, but I read an article, and Brandon read the same thing, that Disney is going to look at their physical media again and start releasing physical media, because they have a great catalog, not just the Fox films, but their Touchstone banner, their Hollywood Pictures. There's so many great films that need the upgrade to a 4K release. I needed The Rock on 4K, and I needed it yesterday. Even Armageddon, I could use a 4K of that, or Tombstone, for Jesus Christ. I would like a Tombstone for that. And we don't have one of those. But I think we're going to get an Aliens 4K. I don't know if they're working on it. I know they're working on The Abyss and True Lies, supposedly. I would hope they would do an Aliens box set on 4K. I would assume, I don't know why they wouldn't. It would sell well. The Alien franchise has always sold well. Any of the box sets they released, that box set right there, that Blu-ray box set, that sold pretty damn well. I don't see why they wouldn't. So hopefully we'll get Aliens on 4K, because we're supposed to get Titanic on 4K. I believe the original Avatar is getting a 4K release sometime by the end of the year. True Lies, finally, which is one that you weren't able to get on Blu-ray even, let alone 4K, and The Abyss, I know for sure. But I can't see them not going with Aliens on 4K. I know you can get Aliens in 4K on streaming, but for us physical media nuts, we need a 4K release of that on disc, and hopefully Disney will give that to us, because why would you sit on that property and not give it to the people? So hopefully we'll get that. James Horner did the score. I love the score to this film. I love the little drums to it. Like, it's a very militaristic score at points, especially during the action scenes. I absolutely love the score. It gets you psyched. It gets you pumped. It's just a fantastic score by James Horner, and he actually did the score without being able to see some of the footage. He had to get working on the score, and he didn't have that much time to do it. And he actually did a lot of the score without even seeing the film, which is kind of astounding considering how awesome the score is. And the score can make or break your film, and this is definitely a film that has a great score. I said about how Cameron had a hard time with the English crew. Well, in England, they like to take tea breaks. From what I remember reading about, 10 in the morning and 2 in the afternoon. Cameron was not used to this. And he was not thrilled because he felt like the crew was wasting his time. And the crew did not have faith in Cameron. They thought this young guy doesn't know what he's doing. So there was a lot of arguing and a lot of behind the scenes drama. Cameron made nice with the crew at one point, and the film got made. On his last day, when they wrapped shooting, Cameron, I have to read this quote. Cameron turned to the crew and said, "The only thing that got me through this production was the certain knowledge that one day I would drive out of Pinewood Studios and never come back, and you sorry bastards would still be here." And that's what he said to the crew and took off. So, yeah, it was not a happy relationship Cameron had with the crew, but considering the results of the film we got, I think it all worked out pretty well in the end. But yeah, they had a very adversarial relationship, and Cameron couldn't stand working with that crew whatsoever. And there was a lot of respected people in that crew, but they didn't respect Cameron, and Cameron was not happy with them. And different personality types. It happens on these movies. I already said Michael Biehn got a call on Friday. He was on set on Monday in England. Of course, the most famous quote from this movie is Ripley, "Get away from her, you bitch." And I love that line. And every time it just puts a smile on my face that she's just taking charge of the situation. And that loader is awesome. And that was all a special effect too. And it was so convincing that companies thought that piece of machinery was available for purchase. And they would call their machine, like whoever made their machines, and ask if they can buy one. They're like, "We don't make anything like that." So it was a very convincing piece of equipment, and it looks great even to today. Of course, Kurt, I know you were saying this to me this week. I say we take off and nuke this planet from orbit. Stop your grinning and drop your linen. I love that line from Bill Paxton. And then I love the speech that the sergeant gives them. Every meal's a banquet. Every paycheck's a fortune. Every formation's a parade. I love all of that. All these quotes are great. And there's ones I'm not even saying. I wrote a bunch down. At the end of the day, to give this a 5, I'm going to go with the letterbox rating here. I would give Aliens a 4.75 out of 5. I like it that much. Leave what you would give it out of 5 stars down below. I'd be interested to hear what you would rate this one. 4.75 out of 5 for me, going off the letterbox scale. I was doing a little research because, we all look back. 5. Yeah, I agree with that. I was going to give it a 5, but yeah, I love that one too. And have you ever been? I love that one too, Kurt. That's a great line. Or the one where Hudson says to her, she thought when they said alien, she thought they meant illegal alien. Signed right up. The back and forth between them are fantastic, but they seem to respect each other, which I love. Those characters, they just come off really well, and they work well as actors. They work well together in Near Dark. If you've ever seen that film, that vampire film directed by Catherine Bigelow, they're fantastic, and obviously Lance Hendrickson's great in the film as the synthetic person. You like Terminator 1 over 2? I love Terminator 1, but I love Part 2. Although I got to see it in the theaters, so it has part of that nostalgia for me. My parents, I actually got to see it in the early 90s in the theaters. It was the biggest movie of the summer. I just remember begging my parents, please take me, and they took me. And I just love T2. But I love Terminator 1. I mean, that's Cameron's second film, technically, if you want to prawn it to The Spawning, even though he got fired off the film. So technically it's his second film or his first film. It depends how you look at it. But that's why he got Aliens off the strength of Terminator. That was why they gave it to him. And he had a great pitch. They said that he walked in on a whiteboard in the executive's office. He wrote the word alien. And then as the S, he wrote a $. And that's what got him the job. And they gave it to him. And here we are all these years later talking about this awesome kick-ass sequel to an awesome original film. So it's simplicitous. It works out. It's serendipitous. It all works out. Now, I did a little research because we all look back on the 80s, and I love the 80s movies. I love them. What got released that summer in 86? I thought this was a fun thing to look back at. Now, you'll never believe this, the cornucopia of different movies. Now, they didn't know if they were going to be hits back then. But first of all, we had Top Gun that came out in May of 86. Ferris Bueller's Day Off came out in June. Night of the Creeps came out in August. I love Night of the Creeps. Texas Chainsaw 2 came out in August. Manhunter, which is an awesome movie about Hannibal Lecter, came out in August. Stand By Me came out in August. Big Trouble in Little China came out in July of that year. Tobe Hooper's Invaders from Mars came out in June of 86. Running Scared with Billy Crystal came out in June of that movie. The Karate Kid 2 came out in June. Friday the 13th Part 6 came out in August. Maximum Overdrive came out in July of that year. Labyrinth came out in June. Cobra, starring Stallone, came out in May. Raw Deal, starring Schwarzenegger, came out in June. Short Circuit came out in May. Flight of the Navigator, if you've ever seen that film, came out in July. Transformers the movie, the animated movie, came out in August. Poltergeist 2 came out in May. And Psycho 3 came out in July. That's a hell of a summer movie season, I got to be honest. I was looking through, I'm like, oh my God, I would have been at the movies every week that summer. And we think the summer movie season are packed now. 86 is stacked with a bunch of movies I like. But so overall, I love Aliens. This is a great sequel. It's definitely the best sequel that Alien ever got, and it definitely is close to being the best movie in the franchise. I know, like we were saying, it could go back and forth depending on the day. It's a movie that I've grown up with. I love it. I mean, that's why Cameron's a legend in this business at this point. The man knows how to make a blockbuster movie. He knows how to make an action movie, and he knows how to make a sci-fi movie. And he just makes really great films. And again, he made other great films after this. T2, I love True Lies. Titanic, not my favorite film, but you got to admit the feat of engineering and effects to pull that off. So it's a very well-made movie. Again, not my favorite Cameron movie, but there's no denying the effort that was put into making that movie. And, Avatar, I like the first Avatar. I've said this before. I mean, he's planning on making a bunch of Avatar sequels. I wish he wouldn't. I would love to see something else from Cameron, maybe another original live action film. But sadly, I don't think we're ever going to get it. And that's fine. He's earned to do whatever he wants in his career. So if he doesn't come back to live action, that's up to him. He's earned it. I mean, he's the highest grossing filmmaker of all time at this point. So yeah, he could do what he wants. He doesn't need me. You don't like Alien 3? I like Alien 3 to a point. I think if they would have left Fincher alone to do what he was going to do, I think it would have turned out better. It's unfortunate the problems Fincher had. Yeah, Titanic is in real time. You're right, Kurt. I think that's just something Cameron likes to do. And he was totally invested in that film, even, diving down to the Titanic in submarines to check it out before he went to make that film. Cameron goes all in on his films. There's no denying that. He's always just goes all in on every film he's ever made. And that's why he's one of the best filmmakers of all time. I love a bunch of his films. They're films that I cherish and I'll always watch. I look forward to showing my son Terminator 2. I can't wait to show him those movies, or Aliens. He wanted to watch Aliens with me the other night, but I wouldn't let him because I didn't get a chance to talk to his mother yet about allowing him to watch it. We watched Rambo 2, though, and he enjoyed Rambo 2, especially the exploding arrows. He loved that. He goes, is that possible? I'm like, not on that level. No, they've tried it. It doesn't. There's guys on the internet that have tried to replicate that, and you can't do it. But it still looks cool on screen. So, God bless Stallone for thinking that up. But at the end of the day, yeah, Aliens is great. I love it. it's a movie I'm going to watch many more times. I've probably seen it at least 50 times in my life, and I'll watch it 50 more before I die. And yeah, I really enjoy it. So let me ask you guys this one: how many of you have seen this film? Have any of you seen Fright Night 2? I'm just asking to get a little bit of knowledge here on how many people have actually seen this little bad boy. Not many people have, and if they have, it's been a very long time since, like, rental days, like VHS rental days. Like I said, it is on. It was. Nope. It's streaming on YouTube. I saw the whole movie was on YouTube. You can watch it for free. Like I said, they're supposed to give us a physical media release. I hope they do by the end of the year. They gave us that great Fright Night 4K last year with some great special features on it. I love that 4K. It looks gorgeous. So hopefully they give this one the same treatment, because it's definitely, I think it's a really good sequel. Tommy Lee Wallace directed that, the man who gave us Halloween 3 Season of the Witch and the It miniseries, and I think he did a really fabulous job with it. It got buried upon release. It got a very small theatrical release because of problems we'll talk about on May 12th, but it's a very fun sequel. Peter Vincent's back, Charlie's back. Evil Ed's not back or that, but it's a fun sequel for sure, and we'll talk about on May 12th. So I know Joe Bob's coming on in 19 minutes, and I'm going to wrap this up. I want to thank everybody for joining me here. Again, Dale_A will join me on May 12th. We'll talk about that one. But tonight you just got me. You had to look at my ugly mug for almost 50 minutes. But I want to thank everybody for joining me. And join us here on May 12th as we talk about Fright Night 2. I hope you all have a great weekend. Cheers to you. I hope you have a nice cold drink next to you. And I will see you next time. Have a great night. And I'm signing off. See you later.